Hello CompuMove friends, welcome to another CompuMove training video. What we have for you today is a look at CompuMove's system of general ledger accounts. CompuMove is based on a completely classic general ledger accounting system, such as you'd learn about in a Principles of Accounting class or as you'd read about in a Wikipedia article. First, we'll take a look at that general ledger account list and we'll look at the account categories: assets, liabilities, equity and capital, revenue, and expense. Then we'll look at how those accounts are presented in various places in the program, in jobs, in account setups, in posted transaction. Then we'll look at how to add or edit a general ledger account. We'll look at how to add assets, including bank accounts, how to add liability accounts, including vendor groups. We'll look at equity and capital accounts, and finally, we'll look at revenue and expense accounts. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Before we do anything else, let's take a look at the general ledger list and see what we're talking about. So in this case, I'm going to go to reports and I'm going to go to account list, and I'm just going to display that list in such a way that I can have a good look at a lot of it at once. So you can see we've got categories: assets, liabilities, stockholder owner's equity, also known as capital, revenue, and expense. And you can see that the general ledger accounts have a number, they have a title, they're either in debit or credit status, and then they land in a category. So this is what we're going to be working with. We're going to look at what's here, we're going to look at where it comes through in various places in the program, and then we're going to look at how to edit this list. Before we look at how to set up a general ledger account, let's look at how these account codes are going to be reflected when we're using the program. The first and most obvious place to look is the job system. So if we start a new job and we go to the charge screen, you can see that every line item has on it a general ledger code. So in this case, I'm on a line item for van and men, and I'm going to pull down that list, and you can see that that's coded for transportation, local hauling. You can pick another category for any line item as may be appropriate, but your default job type should be set up so that things are coded correctly. So for example, if I scroll down here to packing services and pull down the list there, then you can see that that's landing on account 3534, packing local labor. So that way, at the end of the day, when I run my income statement, I don't have to total these numbers up. They're just flowing through onto my management reports with no further work required. In the same way, if I go to the commission tab and say add commission and pick, say, an independent contractor, now when I go to the expense codes there, you're going to see in this example that that's coded for sub-hauler interstate. And I might well have different line items for packing or transportation or extra services if I want to see them landing in a different category, in a different bucket on my income statement. There are other places where this comes through. If we go into setup and we go, for example, into vendor accounts, and I go into Bob's Truck Service, you can see I've got his account set to default to 7,100 repair service vehicles. So if I go to start a new bill for Bob's Truck Service, it's going to automatically land on that account. Again, I can change it, but what it does is it sets the default for me so I don't have to pick the same thing over and over again for normal recurring type transactions. In the same way, if I go to setup and I go to my commission account groups and I go to, say, a sub-hauler, you can see right there the general ledger distribution account for sub-haulers interstate, so that when I do a commission to Smith Trucking, it automatically knows to land in that category. In addition to that, when we go to make transactions through MoveBooks, we're going to see the very same list. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a journal entry. That's the simplest case. You can see that the first three buttons are for accounts that have subsidiary detail behind them, which means when I click jobs, I'm really posting a receivable against individual job records. When I click vendors, I'm posting against a payable for an individual vendor record. When I click commissions, I'm posting against a liability for an individual commission account. So those three are going to funnel me into the sub accounts. And that's actually a subject for another video. But if I go to the general ledger button or the bank account button, then that's where I'm going to see what we're talking about today. Let's start with the bank account button. I click that button, pull it down, and you can see there's the new bank account that we've added, and we're going to be able to use it. And in the same way, if I go to the general button, meaning all other general ledger accounts, you can see there's the rest of the list. So if I need to move money between two accounts, or I'm accounting for something, maybe there's been a bank loan, maybe there was some kind of interchange that took place, I would pick the account that I wanted to use, I would click on it, and I would make a transaction, and away I would go. Now, how to actually make journal entries is not the subject of this video, but it is worth now looking at how we would access those accounts while we're posting transactions. So now that we've looked at the account list from an overview, and we've looked at some of the places that the accounts appear within the transaction processing areas, let's take a look at what we would do if we needed to add a new account. So I'm going to go back to Setup, and I'm going to choose General Ledger Accounts, and I'm going to hit the Add button. When I click this button, it shows me the classes of accounts. I've got to pick one of these in order to get started. Let's start saying I want to add a new bank account. I've closed one of my old bank accounts, I've opened up an account with a new bank, and I want to start a new fresh general ledger account for that new bank account. So I'm going to click on Asset, and it brings me to the setup screen. Now, if I want to add accounts in other places in the asset list, maybe I've acquired a piece of equipment, or I want to add an account for amortization or accumulated depreciation, or one of the many other reasons I might want to do that, then I can decide on the number that I want to use. I would want to do that by looking at the numbers I've already got in play. But in this case, I want to add a bank account. So there's a button just for that. And so I click that button, and what that does is it loads the number with a 1011 prefix. And then suppose I'm just going to say 202 is going to be the number, because I want that to be the second bank account in my 200 division. In this case, I've got a company set up with 2 divisions. So then I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to say, let's just say Bank of Carlsbad as my title. You can see that the financial class is already on cash on hand and in banks, and that's because I picked a bank account type. And so then I'm going to say Add. So as soon as I do that, now I've got that account added to my general ledger list. Now I could turn right around, go to Move Books, make a journal entry, go to Bank Accounts, pull the list down, and there it is, ready for use. So the rest of adding accounts is pretty much more of the same. We've got a couple master categories, 1131 for accounts receivable, 2034 for accounts payable, 2035 for payable commission accounts. Those are reserved numbers because their logic is hard-coded in the system, and it won't let you use those. But otherwise, you've basically got an infinite number sequence. And so while this list can be presented alphabetically when you're making a transaction, it's always a good idea to be orderly in how you assign these numbers so that over time it doesn't deteriorate into something that's hard to look at. So suppose we wanted to add another category. Suppose we had made an investment in another company and we wanted to put it on the books. So I could go Add, and I could go Assets, and let's call that 1410, and let's put it in the 100 division. And then I could say New Moving Equity. So I've created an asset, and I want to call it that. And this is where the financial class comes into play. There's a short list of standard asset categories. You can see them presented here. So if I had made an investment, I'm going to go ahead and pick that, and then I'm going to say Add. So now I've got a new general ledger account that's in that category. If I'm adding a liability account, it's a very similar structure, but I'm going to have a different list of options. So if I say Add and I go Liability, again, I've got a button which will put it in the 2034 group. I could give it a title, and then I can choose from my categories. So the only other difference for the revenue and expense accounts is that the groupings are operational. So if I say add and I pick revenue and I pull down that list, now I've got transportation, packing, storage, warehousing, and other. That's because there are reports that are going to be driven by that. When you look at various performance reports, it breaks it out into those categories. And then on the expense side, it does a very similar thing, except for they are the same operational categories. The final place that this comes out is in the income statement. So if I go to reports and I go to income statement and I go to groups setup, you can see that I've got a category like packing, and then over here on the right hand side I've got the individual GL codes that are going to be grouped into that classification when I run my income statement by group. So that's really the output side of how this works. So the accounts are set up, they're accessed from within the program while I'm doing revenue distribution or while I'm entering a vendor bill or something like that, and ultimately they come out on my income statement. So I hope that's a helpful look at how the CompuMove General Ledger accounts system is organized. And I hope it gives you a good start on customization that you might need to do to suit your own purposes. But as always, if you've got any questions about this, please don't hesitate to call our office. We're always happy to help. Thanks for watching.